What does it mean when a child vanishes without a single trace? No footprint, no scent, no shadow caught on camera, no goodbye, just gone. That is not a mystery wrapped in metaphor. That is the real, documented, 2-year reality of the disappearance of 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers of Hendersonville, Tennessee. Sebastian was not a statistic. He was a boy who loved Minecraft, who had a mind that worked differently and brilliantly, who answered his mother when she called out to him at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. A boy whose shoes were still by the front door the next morning. The more you look at the facts of this case, the more one thing becomes absolutely clear: the answers are out there. Someone has them, and they have been holding on to them for a very long time. My name is Carrie. This is Case and Cues. Let's talk about Sebastian, February 25th, 2024, a Sunday night in Hendersonville, Tennessee, a quiet suburb just northeast of Nashville. The kind of place where people know their neighbors and children grow up with a sense of ordinary safety. Sebastian Rogers was 15 years old, high-functioning autistic, and living with a chromosome deletion that shaped both his brilliance and his vulnerabilities in ways that the people who loved him understood deeply, and the rest of the world still learning. He was home with his mother that night. By all accounts, it was an ordinary evening, the kind that only becomes extraordinary in hindsight. Around 10 o'clock, his mother heard a noise from his room. She called out to him. He answered. That exchange, so small, so routine, so unremarkable in the moment, turned out to be the last confirmed time anyone heard Sebastian Rogers' voice. The next morning he was gone. What his mother found, or rather what she didn't find, set the tone for everything that would follow. Sebastian's shoes were by the front door. His phone was in the kitchen. His Nintendo Switch, one of his most cherished possessions, sat exactly where he had left it. His medication tied to real and serious medical conditions, was still there. He had not packed a bag. He had not left a note. He had, by every visible indication, simply ceased to be there. For a mother to walk into that morning, to feel the absence of her child before she can even fully name it, is something that no words adequately reach. And for that absence to still be the reality 2 years later is something this case refuses to let us look away from. What followed was described as the largest child manhunt in Tennessee history. 2,000 searchers fanned out across a 4.5-mile radius surrounding Sebastian's home. Fire departments, mounted patrols, ATVs, drones, helicopters, the kind of coordinated, large-scale response that is designed to leave very little to chance. They covered the equivalent of 44,000 acres. They found nothing, not a footprint, not a fiber, not a single physical indicator that Sebastian Rogers had ever stepped outside that front door. 4 days into the search, officials held a press conference where Emergency Management Agency Director Ken Widener confirmed that search and rescue dogs had been unable to pick up a scent, and that after covering 2,000 miles, there was still no confirmation that Sebastian was alive. Those words did not come from a reporter piecing together fragments of a story. They came from an official standing at the center of the search itself, and they landed with the full weight of what they meant. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation initially issued an endangered child alert, but within 24 hours upgraded it to a full Amber Alert. That distinction matters more than most people realize. An Amber Alert is not issued on instinct or worry alone. It requires a reasonable belief that an abduction has occurred and that the child is in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. Law enforcement saw something in those first hours, in that evidence, in that home, in that absence, that told them this was not a boy who had simply wandered off. They made that call within a day, and then, after roughly a week, the Sumner County Sheriff's Office announced it was scaling back the physical search and shifting focus to the investigative side. The largest child manhunt in Tennessee history concluded in a week, with nothing to show for it. In missing persons cases, search dogs are often the most critical tool investigators have in those first hours. They don't fatigue the way humans do. They don't get distracted or discouraged. They follow scent with a precision that no technology has fully replicated. When a child walks out of a house and moves through the world, down a driveway, along a street, through a yard, dogs find that trail. That is what they are trained to do. That is what they do. Sebastian's search dogs found nothing outside that home. Sit with that for a moment. His scent existed inside those walls. He had lived there. He had touched surfaces, moved through rooms, breathed air into that space, and left the invisible biological signature that every living human being leaves behind simply by existing in a place. But outside, on the other side of that front door, there was nothing for those dogs to follow. No trail down the driveway, no direction of travel. Just a silence where a path should have been. That single fact may be the most consequential detail in this entire case, because it didn't just complicate the search. It effectively removed the one thing that drives every search forward in those critical early hours, a direction. 2,000 people and 44,000 acres working without a trail to follow is an extraordinary effort aimed at the dark. It is a fair question, a necessary one. And looking at this case honestly means asking it directly rather than stepping around it. Could Sebastian Rogers have simply walked out of that house on his own? Technically, with absolute certainty, it cannot be ruled out. But let's look honestly at what that theory requires us to believe. It requires us to believe that a 15-year-old boy, on a cold February night in Tennessee, walked out of his home without his shoes, despite a well-documented personal aversion to being barefoot. It requires us to believe he left without his phone, without his medication, without his Nintendo Switch, and without any item that might suggest even the most impulsive sense of a plan or destination. It requires us to believe he walked out a door and somehow left no scent trail for trained search dogs in the immediate hours that followed. And then it requires us to believe that for 2 full years, 730 days, a medically complex teenager with genuine health needs has survived, moved through the world, and left not a single confirmed trace. No verified sighting, no camera appearance, no contact with any shelter or service, no reach out to anyone from his former life. Runaways surface. Even the most determined, most resourceful ones eventually generate a trace somewhere, a sighting, a record, a moment where the world catches a glimpse. The silence surrounding Sebastian Rogers for 2 years is not consistent with a living person moving through the world, even a careful one. Asking the question is not only fair, it is essential. But when every confirmed fact in this case is laid honestly against the walkout theory, it doesn't just strain under the weight of the evidence. It nearly collapses beneath it. So if the evidence resists the walkout theory, what is keeping this case from being solved? The answer is not one single thing. It is a combination of factors that have compounded over 2 years and made this case uniquely, quietly devastating. The first is the absence of a starting point. Every search needs a direction. A last known location is only useful if it connects to something, a trail, a sighting, a piece of evidence that gives investigators somewhere to move toward. In Sebastian's case, the home was the last known location, and it offered nothing to work outward from. No scent trail, no footage of him leaving, no witness. A search without a direction, no matter how large or well-resourced, is operating against impossible odds from the very first hour. The second is the speed of whatever happened. The scale of that search, 2,000 people, drones, helicopters, 44,000 acres, deployed quickly and came back empty. That strongly suggests Sebastian was not in that search area when it launched. Whatever removed him from that home did so fast enough and cleanly enough that by the time the search began, he was already somewhere else. Distance creates time. Time makes cases cold. The third is his medical complexity. Sebastian's chromosome deletion and his daily medication are not just personal health details, they are investigative ones. A medically complex teenager who has been without consistent medication for 2 years does not remain static. His health may have changed. His appearance may have changed. Anyone who might encounter him today and feel a flicker of recognition would be comparing a current reality to photographs that are now 2 years old. That gap matters more than people realize. The fourth is the digital question that has never been fully answered. Sebastian's internet access was tightly controlled. His phone could only call or text. At his mother's home, his gaming was limited to a Nintendo Switch with no online chat access. But at his father's home, multiplayer gaming was part of his world, and multiplayer gaming, even monitored, creates contact points that are not always fully visible to the adults around them. Whether that thread connects to his disappearance has never been publicly confirmed. But it is a thread that deserves to be fully examined rather than quietly set aside. The fifth factor is the one that may sting the most: institutional silence. Sebastian's father has spoken publicly about calls to investigators going unanswered, about the momentum of the case fading, about a family left to exist inside the cruelest kind of uncertainty, not knowing, but suspecting, and having those suspicions met with quiet. When a case goes institutionally quiet, public attention fades alongside it. And public attention, tips, sightings, people simply paying attention, is historically one of the most powerful forces in breaking a cold case open. It is the question that sits beneath everything in a case like this, the one that families hold on to in the dark and investigators weigh in the silence between leads. It deserves an honest answer, not a hopeful one crafted to comfort, and not a brutal one delivered without care. An honest one. Yes, it is possible. We know it is possible because the record shows us it has happened before. J.C. Dugard was held captive for 18 years before a routine parole check changed everything. Elizabeth Smart was taken from her own bedroom and found alive 9 months later just miles from home. Sean Hornbeck disappeared at 11 years old and was found alive 4 years later. These are not stories invented to sustain hope. They are documented realities, real children who came home when the world had quietly and painfully begun to grieve them. So no, the door on Sebastian Rogers does not get closed. Not here. Not by anyone paying honest attention to this case. But honesty also requires holding the harder side of that question. For Sebastian to be alive in a captive situation 2 years in, a very specific and sustained set of circumstances would have to be true. Whoever took him would need a deliberate and ongoing reason to keep him alive. They would need to have managed his medical needs, his medication, the health implications of his chromosome deletion, for 730 days without that care drawing outside attention. And they would need to have maintained complete silence in a world where secrets, no matter how carefully kept, have a way of eventually finding their way to the surface. That is a heavy set of conditions, and it grows heavier with every month that passes. What makes it impossible to fully dismiss is Sebastian himself. He is intelligent. He is aware. If he is alive somewhere in a situation he did not choose, that mind of his, that sharp, complex, remarkable mind, has not gone quiet. And somewhere in the life of whoever is responsible for what happened to him, there is a person who has seen something, heard something, felt something that did not sit right and could not be fully explained away. That person may not even fully understand the weight of what they are carrying. When every confirmed fact in this case is laid side by side, no scent trail, no video, no shoes, no phone, no medication taken, an Amber Alert issued within 24 hours of his disappearance, the largest child search in Tennessee history, producing zero physical evidence, and 2 full years of absolute silence, the picture that emerges is not one of a boy who wandered or ran into the night on impulse. It points to a removal, something fast. Something that was either carefully planned or executed with enough awareness of how searches work to leave almost nothing behind. A vehicle pulled close enough to that home that the distance between the door and the outside world was measured in steps rather than yards. Because that is the physical reality of what the evidence, and the absence of evidence, describes. That is what it takes to leave no trail for trained dogs. That is not an accident. That is intention. Someone knew what they were doing. And that same someone or someone connected to them has carried that knowledge every single day since February 25th, 2024. 2 years. No confirmed sighting. No remains. No arrest. No answers. Sebastian Rogers was 15 years old, brilliant, complex, deeply loved, and gone in a single night in a way that defies every simple explanation. He was a boy who answered his mother when she called to him. A boy whose shoes were still waiting by the door. A boy whose family has spent 730 days waking up to an absence that no one has yet been able to explain. The evidence does not point to a boy who ran. It points to a boy who was taken, quickly, deliberately, by someone who understood exactly how the search that followed would work and made sure there would be nothing to find. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened on the night of February 25th, 2024. They knew it the next morning when those 2,000 searchers spread across 44,000 acres. They knew it when those dogs came up empty. They knew it when Ken Widener stood at that press conference and confirmed out loud that there was no trace, no scent, no confirmation that Sebastian was alive. They have known it every single day since. If you have any information about the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, please contact the Sumner County Sheriff's Office or the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation tip line at 1-800-TBI-FIND. No detail is too small, no piece of information is too insignificant. His family is still waiting. Because somewhere out there is a 15-year-old boy who answered his mother one last time on a Sunday night in February, and he deserves more than silence. Sebastian Rogers disappeared from an ordinary house on an ordinary night in an ordinary neighborhood where nothing like this was supposed to happen. And that is perhaps the most unsettling truth of all, because it means the answer to what happened to him is not hiding somewhere dark and unreachable. It is living somewhere ordinary too, moving through regular days, sleeping in a regular bed, hiding in plain sight. His name is Sebastian Rogers. He was 15 years old. He had a whole life ahead of him. And the person who knows exactly what happened to it is out there right now, in that ordinary life, in that ordinary day, making the same choice they have made every single morning for 2 years. The question is whether today is the day that changes. This is Case and Q's. I'm Carrie.